Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. It's Monday. We've got two Monday night games to talk about today and on Early Edge Prime Time and on CBS Sports Network at 12 o'clock. Before we get into any of that, let's take a look at the recap screen. A few too many X's for me. I go 2 for 5. Keep in mind, one of those plays was the DK Metcalf most receiving yards at plus 230, but good stuff from Chip Patterson, Mackenzie Brooks, 1 for 2. Danny Brasco, he's sharp, folks. 3 for 3. We'll take 8 and 6. This could have been better. Again, hopefully you didn't put a full unit on that DK Metcalf play, but either way, it's 8 and 6 nonetheless. Got some soccer cappers in the chat already putting in picks. Love to see that because we don't have any soccer cappers on the show this morning. We've only got two of the best at SportsLine, Mike McClure, Larry Hartstein. We got M Squared. We got the Maestro and myself. Larry, I'm going to start with you. It's Monday. We have two games, which is obviously interesting. We haven't had that for a couple of months. With all that said, your reaction to Week 15, what stood out?
Well, Patrick Mahomes stood out, and how will Carson Wentz carry the ship if he has to? They still could lose the number one seed. When you look at this schedule, when you got Texans, Steelers, and Broncos to finish it off, and Josh Allen wrapping up the MVP, 10 touchdowns in his last 2 weeks, 5 passing and 5 rushing, simply incredible. So that is one thing that jumped out at, and that the Lions injuries finally catching up to them. And they lose Aleem McNeil, they lose Carlton Davis. They've lost so many guys previously, and now they still have the tiebreaker over the Eagles, but they're probably going to have to win out. It's a winnable schedule, but they do have the Vikings in Week 18. It'll probably be Sunday Night Football.
Very interesting. Yeah, Week 18 has some really, really interesting games, division games that could decide whether a team's winning their division and going to the playoffs or going home. Mike McClure, your reaction to Week 15, what stood out?
A lot. When you look at the Bills, obviously offensively, just incredible in what they've been able to do with running backs, essentially just throwing to running backs out of the backfield and schematically. They're on a different level right now, which has been good. I still worry about them defensively for sure. They're in these spots where they're just going to be in shootout after shootout. So if we get to a situation where we do see a Josh Allen mistake, it definitely could put them in super tight games overall. But yeah, very impressed with Buffalo. Kansas City finds a way to win. I don't think they should play Patrick Mahomes a single snap in the next game. They're in the middle of a 3 games, 11 days stretch, playing Saturday this week and then the Christmas Day game. So I don't think we see Mahomes at all this week.
Yeah, very interesting to see how that, I guess it's an ankle injury, how that plays out. Yeah, let me ask you guys this before we get into our official picks. The Bills seem like the team out of the, and anything, everything can change, but do you guys agree with me that right now the Bills seem like the strongest team in the AFC? And I got to ask, Mike, I'm going to start with you, regardless of your answer there. Who's the strongest team in the NFC? Because I've been talking about the Packers for a couple of weeks. I'm starting to think they're on the level with Detroit because of their injuries and with the Philadelphia Eagles. Mike, your reaction?
Yeah, I think they're definitely close. I've been more towards the Eagles side just because of the way they can manage games. I lean Eagles still, but I think it's a toss-up between Packers, Lions. I think the Lions really want to play indoors if it comes to that situation, but I lean Eagles for sure in the NFC. You got to give it to Buffalo right now in the AFC. We'll see. I think that them potentially not getting the number 1 seed, though, is a huge hit to them for sure.
Yeah, Larry, call it right now. Who's in the Super Bowl this year?
Oh, man. Right now it looks like the Bills and the Eagles, but the Ravens got their mojo back a little bit. It probably shouldn't count. Those receivers were like 5 yards clear of any defensive backs. Those were the easiest throws Lamar Jackson will ever make in his entire career against the hapless New York Giants. The one thing with the Eagles, and they suffocate you, they run the ball. They have drives that last over 20 plays. They don't let you get the ball back. But, A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, and Jalen Hurts all came out of that game with an injury concern. So that is something to monitor going forward. So, but yeah, I think the Bills and the Ravens to me right now as the top 2 in the AFC.
Okay, Mike, we're going to get to your pick for Monday Night Football. We have the 2 games. Before you get there, can I just say something? And this is partly because I had Pittsburgh plus 5.5, something that really bothered me. that game against Philadelphia, we knew it was going to come down to, like, you can't turn the ball over. You can't have major penalties. Like, if Pittsburgh's going to hang into that game, they had to play like a clean game, not a flawless game, but a clean game. When Najee Harris got to what was it, the 5-yard line, and there was that scuffle, and then they called back-to-back unsportsmanlike penalty, like personal fouls against Pittsburgh, even though it was very clear both teams were getting into it, which basically took Pittsburgh, the way their offense works, took them out of a potential touchdown and going up 7-3. That was completely crazy to me. And that was very frustrating as a Steelers backers. In those situations, 99% of the time, you see penalties offsetting and that kind of thing. That was super strange. And Mike Tomlin's reaction to that was pretty cool too, as he was talking to the official, kind of shocked. All right, let's go to Bears Vikings. Mike, you've got a first quarter play.
Yeah, we're going to play the under tonight here. Sia, under 7.5, minus 115. I think the price point should be closer to minus 125. You're not going to see a 6.5 for obvious reasons with Minnesota's offense. But when you look at the Chicago Bears, they've been the worst team in the NFL in first quarters, averaging 1.5 points, 0.4 points on the road this season. Divisional matchup, one that I think that is going to be difficult for Caleb Williams overall. So I like the Minnesota defense here. A lot to play for on the Minnesota side still right now. So I think that we get a little bit of a slower start for it. And the way that you've been able to attack the Chicago Bears recently has been through the run game. I know that they've got a great passing game in Minnesota, but early, I expect them to try and get Aaron Jones going just a little bit here. And it hasn't been a super great rushing attack for the Minnesota Vikings either. So I think this is a good spot to potentially get that unit going a little bit in the first quarter. And I ultimately am just essentially betting against a Bears score here. I think we could get the lone touchdown drive from the Minnesota Vikings, but I don't think we're getting multiple scores in this opening frame. I think that clock is moving pretty quickly in this one. So I like the first quarter here under 7.5.
This actually plays really nicely with my pick that I'm going to give out in a few minutes because it pertains to a first half, but it really kind of showcases what the Bears do in first half specifically. I know Mike's was a first quarter bet, but my bet and Mike's bet play well together. All right. Prop bet guy. He's got a lot of bets on SportsLine. He's doing great so far, and he's got a pick that we're going to show you from SportsLine. It's Norman Powell over 20.5 points at minus 113. Jazz Clippers 10:30 Eastern Standard Time tonight. Again, Norman Powell over 20.5 points at minus 113. I know some of you are putting picks in the chat. We're going to get to those. Maybe one of those is a first touchdown score. We've all had our first touchdown bet called back before, and BetMGM is giving you a second chance with BetMGM's Pro Football Second Chance. Place any first touchdown score bet, and if your player doesn't score first but scores second, get your entire stake back in cash, no opt-in required. Log into BetMGM for more details. We got to get to my play. We got to get to Larry's two plays. We're going to do it right after this message from our partners.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
All right, we're back on the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. And Jeffrey Aguilar says, I took the Bears under 23.5, Jordan Addison over 40 receiving yards, and first half Vikings minus 3.5, thoughts at plus 182. I kind of like it. And I like one particular leg of that. Actually, I like all three of them, to be honest with you. I always worry about the Bears late in games in garbage time because that's when Caleb Williams shines, which is kind of funny that that's when he shines. But either way, I like the Vikings first half here. I know Mike talked about this game kind of being slow in the first quarter. The Minnesota Vikings being able to potentially establish the running game behind Aaron Jones. Pretty good matchup for him, especially when you consider defensive line has some injuries too. I think this Vikings offense can kind of probably do what they want. Not that they're going to put up like 40 points, but I think they're going to kind of be able to do what they want in this game. But more importantly, the Bears in first halves have been awful. If you look at since their bye, they've had 7 games. 6 of the 7, they've been trailing at halftime by 4 or more. The one exception was against the Green Bay Packers. This is just not a first half team. Frankly, it's just not a good team in general. This is the kind of team that puts up yards, puts up numbers, puts up points in the second half when they're down 10, 20, and 30 points. So I really like the Vikings at home to come out. This is a good Vikings team, and it's just getting better with TJ Hawkinson being back and Jordan Addison really getting into the mix here. So give me the Vikings first half -3.5 at -122. All right, Larry, that's my pick. Jeffrey Aguilar has some picks here, one of which you might like because I know you have a Jordan Addison play, but start us off with Sam Darnold.
Yeah, well, this plays into your play and it plays into my play. On the road this season, the Bears are the worst defense in the National Football League from a yards per play basis. But I'm taking Sam Darnold to throw 2 touchdowns, which is what he has done in all but one home game. He's coming off a 5-touchdown performance. I just love how aggressive they are. They're dialing up the deep shots. And this Bears secondary, the worst in the league in terms of yards per attempt allowed over the past 6 weeks. That is home or away. So this Bears pass defense was a strength early in the season, but not anymore. We'll see what new defensive play caller Eric Washington can do after giving up 5 touchdowns in 5 red zone trips to the 49ers in his debut last week. We'll see if he has any other ideas tonight. But I just love Sam Darnold over 1.5 pass TDs. And one of his key guys, you talked about it, Sia, is Jordan Addison. This guy has exploded. He exploded against the Bears for like 160 plus, but his longest reception over 22.5, he's hit it in 4 straight. In those 4 games, 30% target share, 42% air yard share. What I love is he could catch this on a deep one, or he could catch a slant and take it over 22.5. So Jordan Addison to cash this exact prop for the 5th week in a row.
All right. We got Sam Darnold. We got Jordan Addison. We got people like Brad Betts dropping knowledge. Mike and Larry, we do have to address kind of the elephant in the room. I led the show with saying there's 2 Monday Night Football games. And Eric David goes, does anyone even care about the Atlanta-Las Vegas game? LOL. And Larry, before I give my answer to that, you go first because there's some unknowns here. I think that's keeping us off for now. Go ahead, Larry.
Well, I didn't really care who the quarterback was, but I wouldn't say loved. I liked the Raiders, but Max Crosby then gets put on IR, and he's such an impactful player because you have to affect Kirk Cousins with pressure, and I thought the Raiders were going to be able to do that. We'll see if they can do it without Max Crosby, but I like this play a lot less now without Max Crosby, and I think it'll be Desmond Ridder in a, a revenge spot, but we know that Desmond Ridder is very erratic. He did play well in relief, though, when he came on at the end of last week. He looked more competent than we've seen him at other times.
Mike, is Desmond Ridder, are we going to see a little bit of what we saw with Sam Howell yesterday in relief of Geno Smith? I feel like that's the caliber of quarterback we're talking about. I agree with Larry that it's probably Desmond Ridder. Have you even looked at that game knowing that there are some unknowns at the quarterback position, the running back position, defensive line for the Raiders? I mean, I certainly lean to maybe some Atlanta props. I looked at Bijan Robinson's rushing over. That's something, it's high, something I certainly would consider in a must win for the Atlanta Falcons. But I don't have a play on this game yet. What's your take on this one?
Yeah, no real play here. I think what Larry said really, really sums it up. I think Atlanta caught a huge break. The one way to impact the Atlanta offense is to get some pressure, right? Mm-hmm. And when you remove Max Crosby, it's not only his individual impact on that snap, it's just his presence in that defense. He's a lot like Chip Patterson on Big Pick Energy Friday. He brings the energy to that defense. When you talk about that team, though, and where they're at this point in the season, I see it in the chat from Steve. What are they playing for? They're playing for a draft pick, right? That's what the Raiders should be playing for at this particular point. So when you remove that kind of guy defensively, I do think it makes a measurable impact. And it just so happens to be something that helps the Atlanta side. So I actually kind of lean under on the game a little bit, mostly because I think Atlanta's going to sustain longer drives now, keep the football away. But yeah, I won't be playing it, won't be watching it. I'll probably be asleep by halftime of that game.
Love it. Well, I won't be asleep, mostly because I'll be on early prime time, giving some bets out. Go ahead, Larry.
Excuse me, Sia. It's not a late night start. I think it's an 8:30 Eastern start. So you got an early bedtime tonight.
Yep.
Well, that that beautiful, well-rested face of Mike McClure. It needs its proper sleep. I totally get that. But I will say this: we're like, I think we're going to start the primetime game the primetime show at 7:00 as opposed to 7:15. Shouldn't matter for you all at home because you have your notifications turned on, right? So you'll get the alert when the show starts. But we're going to cover both games, and honestly, by that time, there's going to be a lot more information, a lot more confidence in some of these picks as it pertains to that game. Again, there are some plays that I'm looking at, just kind of want to see where lines go, want to see who's declared in, who's declared out. We'll know by the time Early Edge Primetime shows up. All right, looking at the chat, I don't know if there is any other questions that pertain to, I mean, we got Rashawn Jones talking about NHL picks, Jeff Stenberg talking some NBA props. Everybody check out the chat. Everybody in here pretty sharp. Brad Betts dropping some soccer knowledge. Well, if it comes to football, we'll get some more football picks in later tonight. And we need a Buckets INT prop. Larry, did you know that Buckets hit again? Geno Smith -110?
I saw it. The guy is incredible. It's like 22-1 or something crazy?
Yeah, I don't exactly know. I know it was like 17-2, and then I think there was like some losses in there, and then he stopped for a couple weeks, and then now he's back. I mean, I don't know what the record is, but it's incredible. So good stuff. Mike, I know you're responding to a couple in the chat. Anything worth mentioning before we get to the recap screen?
Just some college football. You know, we get the playoff this week with games on campus. The guy Mark was asking about just look aheads to potentially betting the winner of a certain bowl to win. And I wouldn't get into that too much until we know at least who's in those next round matchups. I know you know one side of it because of the buys, but the thing that's interesting, you used to see it in college football with just normal bowl games. Things change so much. Now you're giving some of these teams 3 weeks off to prepare for one specific opponent. It's very, very different than when you're playing normal late season college football. So I would not buy too much into making some of those exotic futures. I would just, if you like a team, just simply bet that team to win, or bet them in a money line rollover parlay where you just take them on the money line and roll it over every week.
Speaking of parlays, my SGP, I had, 6 or 7 legs. I hit every leg. All I needed was DK Metcalf to get 50+ receiving yards. And he didn't get there. It was a +687 SGP. Of course, you're always one short on a ridiculous parlay like that, but looked like it was going to cash. Let's take a look at the recap screen before we get out of here. As Rashawn Jones, no, it's Jeffrey Aguilar that says Aaron Jones anytime touchdown. I do like that. Vikings first half -3.5. That's coming from me at -122. Mike McClure on a similar page. Bears Vikings first quarter under 7.5 -115. You heard his analysis, kind of fading Bears points in that one more than anything else. And Aaron Jones getting going with the run game. Larry Hartstein, Sam Darnold over 1.5 pass touchdowns at -143. And Jordan Addison, longest reception over 22.5 yards. And then we've got the SportsLine pick, courtesy of Prop Bet Guy. You can catch all these picks at sportsline.com, but it's Norman Powell over 20.5 points at -113. And Larry in the chat, he says, Prop Bet Guy said he would play the Powell line up to 21.5. So that's really good insight, really good collaboration from the Maestro and Prop Bet Guy. Absolutely love to see it. All right. Well, we'll see you again maybe at 12 o'clock. This crew that you just saw, you're going to see us again on CBS Sports Network at 12 o'clock, talking a little bit more NBA, a lot of NFL, and looking ahead to Week 16. Perhaps more importantly, Monday Night Football. We got both games to talk about tonight at 7 o'clock on the SportsLine YouTube channel. Make sure you join us for that. On behalf of Jake the Snake on the 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s, Mike McClure, Larry Hartstein, I'm the counselor of cash, Sia Nejad. This is the Early Edge. Have a great Monday. See you soon. We rest our case.